If you're new here, welcome. This is Good Times, Bad Friends, a podcast where a few friends sit down for honest conversations about faith, life, and the moments that quietly shape who we become. We just dropped a really big episode last week, so if you're back with us after that one, seriously, thank you. It means more than you know. And if you haven't yet, make sure you stop what you're doing, follow the show on Spotify right now below, pull your car over, turn off your hazards, kick someone out the car. Or I guess they could follow. Someone follow the Spotify, and let's keep these conversations going. Today's guest is awesome. He knows Justin from a past life. His name is Josh Brewton, an Aggie through and through, a former multi-sport athlete, Revelle's handler, a junior yell leader, and someone who's walked through disappointment, uncertainty, and faith with a lot of humility. Josh's story isn't just flashy. It's the kind of story that it just matters. He's proof that God does some of his best work through people who feel pretty average and they're willing to trust him anyway. Dude, I took that from your answers. You're way cooler than that just made that sound.
No, this is why we're not growing fast enough, because you're telling people to kick other passengers out of their car and go follow us before.
We're losing followers.
Instead of all of you following us, kick everybody out of your car.
You ad-lib all the time, so I
follow
tried
us.
it, and turns out I'm terrible at it.
Dude, this is why you do the intros, Josh. It used to be flipped the other way around, but then I would just go completely off the rails. So he would spend 2 hours editing the first 30 seconds of the podcast. But anyway, so now Colin reads exactly from the script, and as you can tell, he kills it every single time on the first take. But thanks for joining us. I continue to be amazed about how old I feel now about having former players on. It's so weird to say that. You probably have, and Quaid, you're going to be mad at me. I'm sorry, whatever, everybody else, but everybody's always mad at me. Everybody's like, well, but anyway. You probably have one of the cooler stories that is not surprising. I think everybody that would listen to anything that you have to say, they follow you on social media, like even myself, it was really cool. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like I always knew that you were going to be, like I said, you were, as a 17-year-old senior, you were probably better and smarter and more suited than any other staff member you had in the high school than we were at, that we were talking about earlier. But just kind of tell us your story, kind of what shaped you, what it was like growing up where you were at, because for me, it was just so weird. Like you caught me at such a weird time being in a big city. Like I felt like a fish out of water. So just, kind of give us your experiences. But just tell us from the beginning what shaped you, what led up to where you're at right now, and then we'll kind of pick it apart piece by piece, man.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say the whole fish out of water thing. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so I grew up in Cedar Park, which is, if y'all don't know, about like 20, 30 minutes north of Austin. It's where Justin, or as I used to know him, Coach Brumfield. He was my receiver coach in high school for a little while, not the whole time. We were talking earlier, just kind of like one of the first guys that I saw had like the same level of commitment to learning kind of the fundamentals of football and learning more about technicalities and stuff like that. And so that was a really cool experience that we got to share. But just for me as a person, grew up playing a lot of sports, doing a lot of hunting, fishing, spent a lot of time outside. Grew up, going to church with my family. It was a big part of my life. I have a really awesome family, blessed with a really awesome support group back home. Have both my parents still together, and my aunt and uncle living about 10 minutes down the road. My grandparents on my mom's side living about 15 down the road. So couldn't really ask for much of a better upbringing, and I'm truly blessed to have what I had growing up. And I have an older brother as well that I could always chase. He was just far enough ahead of me for me to be able to compete with him, but never really be able to win too much. So, that was always a good motivator for me, and something that I feel like truly made a big impact on my life, because there was never really anyone that I was afraid of going against. Like we talked about being from the Austin area, there was lots of people that I went against in different sports and different activities that I was smaller than, weaker than, not as smart, and finding ways to compete and put my best effort out there was something that really defined a lot of the roles that I've had in my life, and has led me into my spot here at Texas A&M that I'm at now. There's lots to pick apart there, but that's kind of just a little synopsis.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get into, that's kind of the meat and potatoes is kind of my favorite phrase that I like to use. But like, that's what, like whenever we had Quaid on and some of those guys that are from the bigger cities, like you talk about growing up, and I guess you can lead to what you meant, kind of being fish out of the water. Like one, where could you possibly find in Cedar Park, Texas, like the concrete jungle of the world, places to hunt and fish and all that kind of stuff you were saying?
That's
like
my question.
Well, yeah, like as soon as you said that. But anyway, like talk about that, and then kind of how was it to go to a place like, for me, like Vista Ridge has 2,500 kids, which is more that was in our entire town that me and Colin grew up in. And so talk about that, because I'm always amazed at people that can grow up in a city with 90,000 people and it feel relatively normal. You know what I'm saying?
No, for sure. So both my parents are from Louisiana. Both of them coming from relatively small towns. My dad's the same kind of way as y'all. Winfield was the name of his town, and it is tiny. And so, he kind of had that whole upbringing of, going to the lake every day and going hunting and fishing and hanging out with, all 14 people in his town or whatever it was. That was kind of passed on to myself and my brother. And so that's kind of where that came from. We would go hunting up in Granger and some different, friends' lands. And so finding public land and then every once in a while getting the deer lease or something like that, just making some connections. That was always a lot of fun and something I really enjoyed because like we talked about, being in a concrete jungle in the city, that was not something that I kind of felt like was natural to me, despite being where I grew up. It more felt natural to do what my dad kind of obviously grew up in for himself, but then also kind of raised us to do, which was something that I thought was really cool. That that small town feel that sometimes you can get in a town that's, even if it is pretty big, and that high school that has more people than most small towns. Like that's a weird way to grow up, especially whenever you don't have that mindset of living in a big city. It's never really been who I was or who I wanted to be, and so it's kind of interesting for me the effect that had on me, because it made it to where I could live in those environments and thrive in those environments, but it wasn't really what I was seeking. So that's kind of what I said whenever I said fish out of water. And in regards to fishing and hunting, that sometimes came a little far and few between, but definitely something that we looked for.
Yeah, and we lived, like he said, in a small little football town. And as I grew up, all the coaches that were on our coaching staff in high school were there from like when we were like in elementary school. So I always think it's interesting that like these bigger schools probably get coaching turnover every year or every other year. So you're having to learn these new leadership styles every single year. So you're talking about Justin being a really tough, hard, gritty, passionate receiver coach. What did that experience teach you about leadership, having to come into your freshman year with Justin, learning kind of his leadership style of coaching? And even if you didn't realize it at the time, what did it teach you about that kind of leadership?
You can be mean.
Yeah, you
It's
make a
okay.
great.
I can take it.
You make a great point. I don't know if you remember Coach Mack or not, Justin. That was, I don't know how long you had been at our middle school that I went to.
Oh yeah, I know
And
Coach Mack.
He was dirt old when I first met him.
He was.
He's still going, and I love Coach Mack. I would sit here and defend him over just about anybody. But he's a great guy, and same kind of idea. I've been there is probably longer than the school's been there, but. And that's not a very old school, so that's not really saying much. But yeah, so going from that being one of our main middle school coaches to freshman year with Justin, it was like a big switch and definitely a different change of leadership style, having like that old mentality of coaching where it was just kind of like every man for themselves and just kind of playing football and knocking heads, to the technicalities of working, how much of a difference one step can make in a route. I mean, how much, your angle of pursuit. I played linebacker as well, and so it really helped me. I ended up specializing in linebacker, and senior year I wasn't really doing much receiving at all, but long story short, it helped my development as a player because I understood how a receiver can get those benefits and those just the slight advantages to make them pop open on a random route. And I knew how to combat it. And so that was something for me that was pretty big in my development. I was never, like I said, never the biggest, never the fastest. And so I had to rely on film and breakdown and preparation to make sure that I had those advantages to myself, and I knew how to combat other people that may have had that idea too. And that was definitely something I had to learn. Like you said, constantly going through some different leadership and coaching. And the best part about that was that you got a lot of the good from those coaches, and sometimes they would leave and it would sting, but you got to get some good from someone else. And I had lots of turnover while I was in high school, but same kind of thing. Got lots of benefits from some people, and then got some new and different ideas and perspectives from different coaches as I grew up and matured. It was really cool because it wasn't just about football. So,
well, listen, two things, because I know Alex has a question. One, I'll tell you the story why I really had to leave. It really wasn't my choice. I'm sorry. Don't hate me on that one. And two, I always hate it. Like, especially at a big school, they were like, yeah, you're going to have like your own guys, stuff like that. And then the defensive guys would come over and go through all my receiver drills, like our two best DBs who were never going to touch the field, Mal and Iman. They came over and they did my receiver drills. And I'm like, so now you know everything my receivers are going to do. So when we go to these one-on-one drills over here, you know exactly how I'm teaching them to get off press, and you're going to press my guys. And they're like, yeah, coach, like, you never know. We could get touches. And I'm like, no. So like these guys would come over and like, I felt bad. Like Josh was an exceptional linebacker, but I would get so like, that's the one thing that would just like, just irk me is these defensive guys would run over and I'm like, what are y'all doing here? They're like, oh, coach want us to work releases. I'm like, we're about to do one-on-one against you guys. They're like, yeah, we just want to see what you teach them. And I'm like, you freaking turd baskets. And so if I seem like I was a little combative against those defensive guys, I do apologize on that part right there, but I just wanted to add a little context. But yeah, I was for sure. Because they would walk over and be like, hey, coach, teach me all your secrets. And then when we go on defense, we shut y'all down and then you look like a terrible coach. And I'm like, oh, thanks, guys.
That's right.
Because at that point, I was a first-year coach. So like technicality wise, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to show you how every step you take really does matter. But then on the flip side, I'm showing the defensive guys, hey, here's how you stop my guys. So I look like freaking clown show number one.
What if countries did that in wars? Let's talk about it. Like, hey, I'm just sending some guys over. We're just going to see what y'all are doing.
Yeah, we're just going to send them to college for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Cybersecurity, if you know what I mean. Just teach us. Like, we're not going to use it. We just want to know if you were to attack you guys, what would happen. Yeah, it's actually a good way to put it there, Colin. So yeah, I was a little. I was
savvy.
Yeah.
A country did send some guys over here to learn how to fly some planes. They did send them over here to learn that.
In September?
Don't jump into that
the end of the story.
I won't spoil it. I think you know where I'm going with that.
Right as school started?
Unfortunately, yes. Well, back to the conversation of leadership and football.
Don't know how we got away from that one anyway.
Not sure what happened there. I think we went off the flight path we were intended to be on. Sorry. So you talked about Justin and having these different coaches, and I like that perspective of like, it sucks to see these coaches leave, but you do get to learn a lot of different good lessons from seeing these different coaches. And so your senior year, you get named a captain, but I think at the same time, you're also dealing with an injury. So I guess one, what was that injury? And then two, how do you like balance like the high and the excitement of becoming a leader and also the low of trying to go through that injury? And how do those two things kind of come together?
Yeah, for sure. For me, that was like a weird in between because I guess, like I said, growing up, I was never the biggest or fastest. Even, when I was doing like Pee Wee football, I was never really like the guy. I started a lot, but it was never like clearing away, like going into the off season, that was me. And so for me, that actually happened after my sophomore year. I was kind of splitting reps between varsity and JV during my sophomore year, and then had a guy in front of me go down, and so was pretty much solely practicing with varsity, but still getting a lot of reps in with JV, and was kind of like a back and forth thing, which ended up being really good for my development. Got a lot of kind of sneak peeks into what it looked like to do a varsity practice and get those reps and dress out for game days, stuff like that. And so that season ended, sophomore year was over, and I looked around and I was the most senior guy left, and it was really weird to me. I'm technically still a sophomore, but in football terms, I was a junior, and I was like the most experienced guy on the field, and it was on the defensive side for the linebacker room. And so it was kind of a weird realization of like, it's time to step up, or, someone else is going to. And so that was a pretty cool thing for me. And so then going into my senior year, I was, pretty hands down the guy. And so that was a really cool experience getting to have that backing from not only the coaches, but also players. The way we did our captains was, it was always kind of team votes. And so getting to be named captain was a really cool experience. And, growing up in that area, having all these guys that you played with your whole life and, basically like your childhood friends, be able to say that about you meant a lot to me. And so that was a really cool experience that I got to have, and something I'm really grateful for. And then spring ball, I ended up breaking my thumb in like the third day of contact. So that was pretty early on, nothing too brutal, but just made it to where I was wearing a big old club and played the spring game with a club on. So that was a fun experience. It was, something I was just having, honestly, a little too much fun with. I probably should have waited a little bit longer to start playing, but I kind of skirted some stuff and had a big old club on and wrapped it up, and actually dropped a pick in our spring game because I went and dove and tried to one-hand a ball and it just bounced right off the club. So that was
one hand with
that
the
was
club,
not a great
huh?
Yeah, that didn't work very well. Not a great idea, but then coming into the fall, the first football game we had fall of my senior year, I ended up tearing my labrum in my left shoulder. And so nothing that was too like could have been season ending, but it was one of those things where the doctors basically told me that I got 3 or 4 games in before I actually got it diagnosed, and so it's basically just playing on it for those first couple of games, and then told me that it wasn't going to get any worse. It was just pain management, and so ended up playing the whole season on it. And so that was something that I was pretty challenging for me, but also was something that I was never going to back down from. I knew that football is what I loved, and there was a pretty solid chance that I wasn't going to be playing anymore after that season. And so, it was kind of all in for me. And so that was a good learning experience because I saw a lot of players and people that, like I said, my childhood best friends growing up that were doing a lot of the same stuff. One of my best friends growing up had like a minor, I don't think he actually fully tore, like a partial tear of his MCL or something like that. And he was supposed to be like a stud running back for us, was playing linebacker with me a lot in the offseason, and they switched him over to running back, and he just lit it up. He was looking really good. And first game or two did that partial tear, and so he actually came over and went back to linebacker because he couldn't make those hard cuts at running back. And so just a lot of great guys that I really loved growing up. And so it was cool to have that experience where, as a team, you could tell that people were going all in despite their minor mishaps or whatever you may call it. But ended up getting surgery after senior season and had that get fixed up. But it was pretty cool to me, honestly, getting to have that whole year and battling through that injury and watching people work with me through it in the training room and going to, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but a Rosti, it's like a deep tissue massage. And I mean, one of the worst pains I've ever felt. But it made it to where I could play on Fridays, and wouldn't trade it for the world. But it was definitely a rough year, but something I'm really happy that went my way where I was able to finish out the year and not have to stop. So,
well, I feel like a lot, like I attribute, or I guess I notice a lot of the people from that area. I think we were in such a good pocket of like kids that were, I mean, to be honest, a lot of like pretty middle class, upper middle class kids. But I think just in general, but I think it helps with the environment you're raised in. But I think a lot of the kids at Vista Ridge were just used to facing that adversity. Like we were never the biggest, strongest, fastest team. Like if you looked at the eye test, we would have been 0-10 every single year. And then you compound the fact that like you're fighting through injuries and you're having to go through all this stuff. But then ultimately having those people around you that have the exact same mindset, like that's what fired me up. Is like, it just seemed like everybody that walked in that building, everybody that was in that program, they were all moving the same direction. Like very rarely did you get those guys that were trying to fight it, or they didn't really believe in what we were doing, or they didn't trust anybody to the right or to the left. Like, and I feel like now kind of jumping into the next part of your life, and I didn't know this, that you were trying to go to the Naval Academy, but like, what do you think, or I guess what do you do with your faith whenever God says no to something? Like you get to this point, you fought through so much, you've had success, but I think you learn more through these, adversity filled moments or whatever. But how did you get challenged in that situation where you're like, okay, this is my next step, this is what I'm doing, and all of a sudden the door closes on you? Like how did that make you feel, and what did that teach you?
Yeah, it's definitely a loaded question. Like you said, I want to go to the Naval Academy. That was kind of like pretty much the entire course of my high school career was kind of culminating in that moment. Something I was working for a while, working on test scores, grades, GPA. Wanted to go play football in college, and my whole thought process there was, unless I get to about 6'3" and 225, I was probably going to have to figure out an alternative path. So I actually started long snapping, something my dad did in high school, just kind of because he was asked to, and found a way to possibly make it work. Did I lose y'all?
No, you're good.
Nope, good. Okay.
No, you're good.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
But yeah, I started long snapping, and that was my goal, was to go to the Naval Academy, get in, hopefully just by academics, and then walk on the football team and try to long snap. So no, I wasn't probably going to wow people with film from linebacker, but maybe I have a shot to make the team as a long snapper, and then either keep going there or possibly try to work my way on through the defense, just kind of see where it took me. And then, the first step of that was obviously getting into the Naval Academy, and that didn't happen. And so after all that preparation of fighting through senior year injuries and trying to get as much film as I could, and having that surgery and going to PT all the time and working through that, to then come into like mid-April to not get in, not be able to do the first step, was pretty challenging, and something that I felt like had this whole life plan of, I was going to go play football at the Naval Academy, and I was going to become a fighter pilot and do Top Gun, like all these different things that I had like these.
You see the movie and you're like, yeah, that's me for sure.
I could do that.
Exactly.
I could do that.
Volleyball. Yeah. Yeah.
Best summer ever. Here we go.
Yeah, seriously. So that was kind of like the thought process. I had honestly a lot more planned out than I probably should have at that age, but got to the point where it came time for anything to happen, and the first step didn't go my way, and so that was something that was pretty challenging for me. And so I felt like I had this great plan for my life, and in reality it was, God had this plan that I never could have seen coming from any different angle. And so lots of really cool things that I've gotten the opportunity and the blessing to be able to do in the last 2 or 3 years. And zero of it would have happened if I did go to the Naval Academy. And then one of those things being that, multiple things, but the main thing that glares out to me, getting engaged and having the girl that I was dating in high school, also ended up coming to A&M, and being able to stay close with her and connected to her. And honestly, it's been a massive pivoting point in my life and something that I will never not be grateful for. And so that's something that has really changed a lot of the ways that I look at life and how I kind of remember that, I can have these really cool plans and great aspirations of flying fast jets. Like, that's great. But at the end of the day, God has a plan. And in my opinion, one of the biggest parts of his plan was her for me. And so that's something I've been really grateful for and been able to realize looking back on. It's cool to have like these great plans, but the foundations and relying on God was something that I wasn't really seeing at the time. So he gave me a little reality check, I like to say.
Oh, that's cool. And it's cool now that you can look back and see how it got you onto the right path. But if you can kind of take yourself back to that moment, is that how you felt, when it happened? Because like you said, you've been working for 3-4 years trying to get to this moment. I guess, like, what was that initial reaction? How did you kind of respond? Yeah. I mean, did you see then at that moment, like, okay, something better is going to come from this, or how did you feel?
No, definitely not. Definitely not see that.
No. You're like, this is the worst thing ever at the moment.
I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty down for a while. Like I said, I had my life planned out for 20 plus years, which was really dumb at the time looking back. Like there were so many things that had to go right there. Literally step one didn't. So, like that was something that looking back was probably a little bit too ambitious to be putting all the eggs in one basket that took so many things to go right. But no, in the moment, I thought that everything was, crashing down, ending, and being a 18-year-old that just had in his mind, his whole world tumbling in front of him, didn't really know what was going on. And so thankfully my girlfriend, or now my fiance, and I had started dating back in like January. So 3 or 4 months before that. And we were getting to the point to where we could really like see something that was different. And it was pretty encouraging having her by my side throughout all that. And so I think that was the first kind of indicator of like, okay, I'm not going to the Naval Academy, but that also means that I'm not going to go to, Maryland. And at the time she was going to Baylor. And so that was a little bit of a flicker of like, okay, maybe that's kind of like an indicator here. And then there's lots more to that story, but no, definitely not something that I felt immediately of like, it's okay, God has a plan, which thankfully I've gotten to the point to where now I've, had not to the same extent, but similar instances of things just not going my way or plans changing, doors closing, and remembering that, I can have all these great plans, but if God says no, that means he has something better in store. And maybe it doesn't seem better at the time, but, you're going to look back in 5, 10, 20 years and be, you couldn't even see it happening the other way. I think the same thing now. I mean, I couldn't even see myself in the Naval Academy, and I am still looking at doing military, but it's one of those things where the route to get there that I would have taken and the things I would have missed out on, just, never could have seen this coming.
Sometimes it's a redirect too, and not like a hard no. Sorry.
Yeah, and
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the path that you're talking about now is like you're on this path that you met your now fiance in high school, and now you're at A&M together. So one, congrats on the engagement. I tell everybody this. I feel like the old man in the room. Like, marriage is just the best. It's so fun. It's like dinner with your best friend every night, praying, and it's the best. So congrats on that. And now we're gonna get to the part where I thought I was going to dread, but you're already making me kind of like you're such a nice guy and you love Jesus, and so I guess there must be something good happening. And so let's talk about, why does Texas A&M shape people differently than most schools? Now's your time. Here's your sales point. Here's your sales pitch. Why does it shape people differently than most schools?
All right. So I got to ask, do you have kids?
No, I'm the only one without kids.
Okay. So whenever you do, you'll remember this moment, and it will. And whenever they're choosing colleges, you'll thank me.
Okay.
Texas A&M has a unique mindset and upbringing, and I would say that it has a lot to do with, and totally unrelated, but in my mind, has a lot to do with the same mentality that we were talking earlier about Vista Ridge having, where not necessarily always being the underdog, but just being different than the people around you in the best way possible. And so there was lots of times at A&M growing up, you can fill in the blank, where I just felt kind of like I was different, and it didn't feel great, and there was a lot of reasons why it didn't seem like it was the best thing going on for me. It seemed like it was my fault, or, I was mad at my parents for not being able to watch this movie or go hang out with these people, whatever, fill in the blank. The point being, Texas A&M, started out as an all-male military school, and the whole idea there was that, you know, it was training people to become military officers, and then obviously over the course of time, it's become something totally different. But the core values and the core mission behind it stays the same, and so that the training, the aspect of why we do what we do and who we do it for, it's still very service oriented and very much dedicated to people outside of you and serving a greater purpose than just yourself. And so, if you ever have the chance to go to anything related to Texas A&M, obviously football games are great. Baseball, basketball, buckyball is killing it right now. I know we just lost, but we're having a lot of success in athletics, and that's all great and dandy. But if you ever have the chance to go to some pretty cool A&M traditions, I would highly recommend it, especially if you do ever get to do a college tour or anything like that. There's two things that I would recommend more than anything. One is called Silver Taps and one is called Muster. I don't know if y'all know what either one of those things are, but long story short, Silver Taps happens once a month on the first Tuesday of each month. We actually just had one yesterday. And so basically it's anytime a current student passes away, the entire campus will gather at 10:30 at night on the first Tuesday of each month, and they'll honor the family of that student who has passed away. And so, for example, this was February. We weren't in school the first Tuesday of January, and then we were out of school first Tuesday of December as well. And so this was anyone that had passed away that was a current student from November, probably 5th or something like that. So from the first Tuesday of November to yesterday. And so there was 5 Aggies who had passed away, current students at Texas A&M had passed away. And so there was probably anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people in the heart of campus last night at 10:30 at night there for 5 families. And I didn't know a single one of the people who had passed away. And yet there's still, like I said, thousands of people there just supporting other Aggies simply because of the fact that, they're also an Aggie. And so there's just a core value of that family oriented feel. And like you talked about, having a big town campus. I mean, Texas A&M has almost 80,000 students. That's a massive school. And to have that sort of a commitment to other people and something bigger than yourself is something that is not common anywhere, in my opinion. I don't even think the service academies have that kind of a feel, and they have kind of that same background. I'm sure that there's some sort of tradition that they have similar. But to have a public university that has 80,000 students doing stuff like that on a random Tuesday night is insane to me.
Can I ask a question?
And then the second one, yeah, go for it.
And this is I hope this comes off respectful. Do you have each month a student die each month to where you can that just seems like a lot of students passing?
It doesn't happen every month, but with 80,000 students,
that's a good point.
I would say probably 9 to 10 months a year. And to be fair,
which is very sad.
Obviously, we don't have them over the summer. It's sad. It's a tragedy. It's a harsh reality to realize.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about, most of those people are anywhere from 18 to 22. They factor in master's students, PhD students, and all that. But at the end of the day, that's another thing that's really touching about it, is that for the majority of those people, they could easily be in your shoes, and it could easily be you or someone that you're extremely close with that you are in class with. There's so many instances where I've heard stories of people like that, where it was someone that they knew or a close friend of someone that, that's the whole point, is that you're there to support an Aggie who is no longer, with us. And so it's a really cool experience. It is sad, and it's kind of insane that it happens as much as it does, but that's part of the thing with having such a big university, is that it's just kind of,
well, and they're not forgotten,
life.
right?
Exactly.
People don't just go on the wayside. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me up to my second point. So I told you there's 2 traditions. That's one, Silver Taps, and then the second one is Muster. So Muster is basically Silver Taps, but for any person who is ever at Texas A&M, student, professor. There's actually a coach that passed away, not this past year, but the year before, and they honored him at Muster. And it's basically anyone who has ever been at Texas A&M, if they pass away during that year on April 21st, they're honored at Muster. And so they do what they call a roll call. And so, for example, if, John Smith passed away, they would read John Smith and then his class year, and then the entire, you do it all over the world. We'll talk about that in a second. But the main one located on Texas A&M's campus is Helmet Basketball Stadium at Reed Arena. And, for example, that one probably has 15,000 people at it. And so 15,000 people are going to sit there and say here for the person that's no longer with us. And so that's a really cool experience to have, especially as someone who didn't grow up at Texas A&M. Like I didn't bleed maroon. I wasn't an Aggie growing up, and so that was something that I didn't really understand until I got to Texas A&M. And so getting to experience that and see it happen, and then also had the exact opposite experience where someone's sitting to my left and like their great grandpa who was at Texas A&M in like the 50s passed away, and like I got to say here for that person's grandpa, and like that that connection of two people that have a totally separate path to Texas A&M, but in the same place. Where there's a saying at Texas A&M where like I'm assuming y'all know this, but there's like the official greeting of Texas A&M is howdy. So like everywhere you're walking across campus, people are constantly saying howdy. And so there's a saying at Texas A&M where people are known from a howdy to a here. And so as soon as you step on foot on campus, people say howdy. And then the day that you would pass away, muster is held every year on April 21st. So that year on April 20th, someone will say here for you. And so it's kind of a weird thing to think about, how it's kind of like a little bit of a like death thought process. But anyway, it's just a really cool experience to know that, like you said, you'll never be forgotten. You'll never be just kind of cast the wayside because all you're doing is getting a degree and then getting out of there. A&M is a lot more than that. And I think a lot of universities try to claim that, but I think A&M lives to that a lot more than most places will be able to.
Well, and I think too, that's where I think y'all's biggest praise is also everybody else's biggest criticism, because if you go to any kind of university that matches y'all in numbers, the whole, like, it is what it is. Everybody's like, oh, how's the Colt and all that kind of stuff like that. But like, how many places can say we can have 80,000 people who come from all over the world? Because I'm sure you guys get people like from every single place you could possibly imagine on a map. You just close your eyes. And they all have these unwritten rules. Like, I'll never forget. I'm just going to kind of get off the path just a little bit. But we went to watch the Masters tournament over there in Augusta. Yeah. And there's these things that have been rules for, hundreds of years. And it's like things you hear. It's like this, like almost like these fairy tales. Like there's no trash. People can put their seat down. It stays there all day. You're like, there's no way this has stood the test of time. And then you go there and I'll be dang, like the whole thing is true. And like nothing, like nobody deviates from these unwritten rules or whatever. And then, so now we've kind of started to where I take my son to a football game and everything like that. And it's like you said, you kind of just fall in love with the fact that a lot of people come there, they don't share those values, but then they bond within those values because there are things like that. Because, okay, I feel heard, I feel seen, I feel respected. And God forbid if something were to happen to me, like I feel like I have people that would mourn me. I feel like I'm already a part of this family. And I think that resonates a lot with people like you that come from a community of, I played sports, I did this, I was around people that had this common cause, and it just feels like, for me, it always felt natural to me. So when I get in environments like that, when I feel like I'm a part of a team, or I feel like I'm a part of people that I'm not necessarily blood relatives with, but I feel like a family with, like I feel like that just resonates with me a lot quicker. So I could see how once you get there, like you buy in that much faster, because it's just something I think we naturally gravitate to, is we find that community and we just kind of go all in. Colin gives me crap all the time. Like, listen, I went to UMHB. There's like 85 people that go there. So obviously there's not a huge community that I get to share it with or whatever. And we don't have freaking mascots running around and everything. We don't play on national championship.
Shut it down.
You
claim to be a Texas fan.
Okay. I was going to lead into it because I get it. And I'm not necessarily allowed to do this, but I'm $60,000 in debt and I don't even use my degree. So UMHB, that's a wash anyway. So I'm a secondary Texas fan, and I have been for a while. And then all of a sudden, my wife's family, her grandpa was in the Corps Cadets. And so we kind of had that connection a little bit too. And then I just start thinking and then I had kids. And I'm like, wow, would I want my kids to go to Austin, Texas and get toys thrown at them? Or could they go to somewhere like College Station to where everybody they're around has the same goals and aspirations and they're in the same type of environment? So you do start to factor in stuff like that. Like, will they feel comfortable and protected and supported by the people around them? Or is it just going to be a conglomerate of people who are just there to get their education, put their head down, not, be social, make relationships? Anyway, all that to say is not only you went to this university, like this is the one thing where I saw, I was like, wow, that's freaking cool. You got into one of the most premier roles of all the traditions and everything that you have. Like, tell us about how you stepped into becoming a Yale leader. Colin butchered Reveille's name, so that's going to be hilarious. I didn't realize it was something you did.
Really?
And I kind of, Reveille or whatever her name is. So I knew that, there's things you have to be careful with. Like, with y'all having these traditions for so many years and there's thousands of people, like, you do have to be careful. Like, I'll go and there's things I mess up and everybody's like, how dare you? And I'm like, okay, this is why people make fun of y'all sometimes. But anyway.
Right. He didn't correct me. What a guy. What a guy.
What a guy. I know, he's a nice guy. So take us through what made you want to go after that? And then when you got there, what were some of the things you learned? What can you share without getting in too much trouble?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, first step, I guess I could say, part of that whole thing of still pursuing the military was, once it was a no from the Naval Academy, trying to find what the next step was, and the Corps being one of the largest producers of officers to the military in the world, that was kind of a pretty drawing cause. And excuse me, for me, it was kind of a foot in the door from my older brother. He went to Texas A&M. He wasn't in the Corps. He's a brainiac. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But he just kind of had that like foot in the door for me, getting to understand a little bit, just at a microscopic level of what Texas A&M was about from him. Same kind of thing, getting to go to football games, getting to just spend some time with him in his dorm and with some of his friends. And like you said, just getting a glimpse of what people cared about and what they talked about Texas A&M being about. To get to experience that was kind of like the first kind of inclination of why Texas A&M was the choice for me. And then once I got here, joining the Corps, that's kind of like, as much Kool as you can possibly drink. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's like as deep dive as you can possibly get. But I don't know, for me it was like, so I joined the outfit. Reveille is taken care of by one outfit. So every year it's a sophomore from company E2 that's her handler. And so I happened to join her outfit. And so that was kind of not a happenstance. There was a little bit of intentionality there, but it wasn't never really a thought. That was just kind of like a cool thing that I noticed. And like I said, a lot of people will grow up, lifelong Texas A&M fans, and that's something that they dream of. That wasn't me. And so once I kind of understood more of what was going on, that was something I pursued. But it's a long process. It's a pretty big tryout, and so didn't really have any idea that it was actually going to be a reality or a possibility for me until not even this time. My freshman year was closer to like late March, early April. And then I was chosen to be Reveille's handler
Nice.
mid-April of my freshman year. And this is something that's really cool to me. Throughout the course of my freshman year, your freshman year in the Corps is pretty hard. You're basically just always wrong. It's like going through boot camp in the military. Like everything's your fault. You're always wrong. It doesn't matter how
You're
good
always
you do. Yeah, and so they do a really good job of making sure that you hit rock bottom so they can build you back up. And then like there's just lots of really cool learning experiences to have from those kind of moments. And for me, something that I've never really forgotten and was a nice little nod from God. I truly believe that he has a fantastic sense of humor, because so I got picked to be the handler on April 12th of my freshman year in college. A year from that, or a year before that, to the day, April 12th of my senior year in high school, was the day that I got rejected from the Naval Academy. And so like this whole
Wow.
like idea of what I was going to do and who I was going to be and all these different things where I was going to go, came crumbling down. And then literally to the day 1 year later, it was like this culmination of events of learning and growing and figuring out who I actually was and who he says I was. Like all these different things that I went through my freshman year. We call it fish in the Corps. The freshmen are called fish. It's kind of dumb, but yeah, that was a pretty cool moment for me, and realizing that was something that was a great reminder of what I talked about earlier, making sure that you remember that God's really in control and he has a plan for your life that's much greater than anything you can possibly imagine. Because that first April 12th, my senior year, never could have seen anything close to what happened throughout the course of that following year. And so that was something that was a good reminder for me. And then was the handler for a year. That's a year-long commitment. And then during the course of that year, I went through the tryout process to then get selected to run for yell leader through the Corps. And that was a really cool experience. Like you talked about, one of the kind of spots at Texas A&M and something that you can really excel at. And Texas A&M has a lot of really cool traditions and things that you were talking about earlier, where you don't really understand from the outside looking in. It doesn't really make much sense. But then when you get here and you get to experience a lot of the really cool parts of campus and and the university in and of itself, the community around it. There's lots of really cool experiences that you can have just by being here, and then being blessed enough to kind of be at the forefront of that has been something that I will forever be grateful for. Never would have seen coming again. That was kind of a crazy experience, getting from where I was as a senior in high school and into the Corps, and then now today, technically we have to run again. That's going to happen pretty soon, but yell leader is actually a student body elected position, so it's kind of like student body president, same kind of idea. So technically I have to run again. That actually happens in like just under a month. But long story short, there's just been lots of hills and valleys and curves throughout that process. And so getting to go from where I was senior year to then, like this fall, standing on Kyle Field in front of 110,000 people. And, we are beating the crap out of everybody until we get to the end of the season, and we just won't talk about that. But, like that was,
we can, if you
that
want
was something
to.
that was,
I have time.
no, that's all right. But yeah, man, I hate DKR so much. But yeah, there's just lots of really cool things that I got to experience this year and in previous years, and things that never would have happened, like we talked about earlier, if I had followed my own plan.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw you running out in front of 100,000 people, like you look like you were enjoying that plan pretty well. Like leading the team out, I was like, oh, that's pretty freaking cool. Like, give me a helmet, and I'll run through a wall.
Yeah.
I think Alex has questions on tradition, but I have 2 questions about Reveille. Right?
Okay, go for it.
Well,
Yes, sir. You got it.
Got your people back. All right. And good luck on your student vote. When they find out that you're on the world's biggest podcast, you'll be a shoo-in. So you're welcome as well. And then
record number of votes.
So I heard, and I want you to clear this up for me. 1, Reveille is blind and wears an eye patch. We'll cross that bridge. And then 2, I heard that Reveille during the football games just gets to have free range of the suites, just gets to walk wherever they want, because everyone's like, well, they graced us with his presence for this game. So our suite is, I don't know the gender. Our suite is the chosen one because the dog chose to join us. Fix me. And this question.
Help me, please.
Oh man, it's always
this is not disrespectful, I promise.
No, totally understand. There's lots of things to grasp, so no hate.
Yeah, you idiot.
It's always such a funny experience whenever someone really has no clue what's going on with Rev, because it's very interesting to think about. Reveille, you got it right. Rev is just kind of like a nickname, but yeah. So to hit your questions, so the current Reveille 10. There's been 10 Reveilles, 9 before her. They serve anywhere from like 6 to 8 years. Kind of just depends on their abilities and their comfort level and stuff like that. Long story short, this one had glaucoma in her right eye, and so she had surgery to remove it this past summer. So that's not like a thing that happens every time where like they have to wear an eye patch or anything. That's just like she actually had like surgery to remove her eye, and so she doesn't have a right eyeball anymore. And so they wore an eye patch she wore an eye patch for 1 game. I don't really think that the marketing team, I'll be careful with how I say this. I don't think the marketing team liked the presence of Reveille with an eye patch, and so they chose to discontinue that effort.
Mm-hmm.
But long story short,
people in Austin know about it, and that's the picture they use for Reveille's profile picture, just so you're.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so that's something that a lot of people like my age really love, but didn't get a lot of support from other people. Yeah. But anyway, so people really love Rev. Most mascots, they kind of like either most universities don't have a live mascot anymore, or if they do, they're kind of like in a cage or off campus or anything like that. Reveille lives on campus in the core dorms so like, for example, when I was the handler, she like slept under my bed every night. So went to class with me.
Wow. That surely you were nervous about that some nights. Like, did you look under the bed like, oh my God, like, is she still here?
Yeah.
Could you imagine if you left the door open, Josh? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Rev got like, your chocolate.
Yeah, like it's a insane amount of responsibility to give to a bald 19-year-old. I'm not gonna lie, like it's kind of insane.
That's a good point. They make you feel so bad. They're like, oh, hey, by the way, like you're this low totem pole person, but you have the most important animal on planet Earth under your bed. So don't screw it up.
You hit it on the head. I mean, there's like, that's the funniest part. Like, being a yell leader is really cool. Like, there's lots of awesome experiences that come from it. But it's only juniors and seniors. It's kind of one of those things where like you're posted on a pedestal. When you're Rev's handler, like you're still not really that high on the totem pole. It's just that you're with the highest person on the totem pole, and so
she's like making you cool.
Exactly. Like there's a saying that the handlers have the most famous legs in Aggie land because there's so many pictures of like me from like knees down because they're just pictures of her. And so yeah, so there's lots of really cool things you get to experience from that because so many people love Revs, like come running up to you, and you think that like this girl is just gonna like talk to you, or this guy, like this football player, is gonna like have this great experience with you. And then they just run up, and as soon as they get to you, they just look straight down and they just start petting Rev.
You're like, get out of the way. I want to see that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of humbling, but also a good reminder of like, at the end of the day, it's not about you, it's about her. And so that was some really cool experience that I got to have. And I don't know, it's just something that I was, again, not expecting in high school. Didn't even know who she was in high school. And so getting to go from that to then being a freshman and everything is wrong and bald. And, like you said, one day they're just like, you're the guy. And so that was a fun experience, and definitely a pretty up and down, but I don't know. I think I hit both your questions. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was it. Sorry, I worded them so poorly, and it's
No
genuinely
worries.
coming from a
How
place
dare
of
you.
like, I'm truly interested and curious about these things.
Well, there's
Love it.
like one more that I've never actually talked to somebody who's been in a class. If she walks into your classroom, you're done with that class, right? Like it's done. You just leave.
No, so she goes to class. Like I'm an economics
that
major,
too.
so like if we like I had an Econ 202 class, and for example, like if we walk into that class, you sit down, professor starts lecturing, 10 minutes and she barks, then class is done. It's when she barks. So she goes to class like almost every day. It's then if she barks is whenever class will be dismissed.
I'm also brand new to this. Don't know any of this stuff. Why
Idiot.
do y'all have a dog?
What? That was dumber than my question.
No, but
Where have you
why
been
is
this
that-
whole time,
Why is that
Alex?
the mascot of a military all men's school,
Oh,
and y'all
I
picked a
see.
little girl dog? Like that's the part I'm confused on.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it starts back in the East. There were some cadets in the Corps that were in Navasota for a trip, and they were driving back to College Station, and they saw like an injured puppy on the side of the road, and they brought it back to the dorms, which was not allowed at the time. You couldn't have like animals in the dorms, but they kind of like tried to nurse it back to health. It had like a little like leg injury, like one of the legs was hurt in some way. And they nursed her back to health, and then there's more to the story, but long story short, she eventually just kind of like joins their like ranks. Whenever, like, if you ever, did y'all watch MASH? That's always like the go-to answer that I have. Did y'all watch
Yeah.
MASH? Okay, so
Sorta, yeah.
any kind of like military TV show or movie, if you ever hear like a fast-paced like bugle tone, that's like at formation whenever like the flag is going up, that song is called Reveille. It's actually called Reveille. It's a French word. But she like went out to formation with the cadets, and whenever the song was playing, she started barking along to it. And so they started calling her Reveille in like as like a namesake because she would bark along to the song and it just stuck.
Gotcha.
And so that was the first Reveille. And then whenever she unfortunately passed, like 12 years later or something like that, it kind of just like didn't feel right, and they got another one, and they haven't looked back since. And so it was kind of like you said, it's kind of a weird fit for a formerly all-male military school, but it just works really well. There's lots of things that don't make sense about A&M unless you kind of explain it, and even then it still can kind of not make a ton of sense, but we like it and it works. So people love Rev. It's insane. Like when I tell you that I'm probably in, especially if you have like a wide angle lens, I'm probably in 10,000 people's camera rolls at the A&M because of how many
True.
pictures people would take just like walking around campus, going like there's a booth at the Texas Roadhouse in College Station, and it's literally called the Reveille booth. There's just like pictures everywhere and frames on the booth, like everywhere, just from people taking Rev to Texas Roadhouse. Like it's crazy. There's lots of people that love Rev and constantly want to take pictures with her. So
Yeah, and then now you become a celebrity too. It's like you said, you have the most famous legs in Aggieland. That's hilarious. It's like you're standing there and like, Marcel Reed's like, you're like, hey man, you're like, hey dude, I'm here to see the dog. But anyway, so like you being in that, and I didn't know that about the Reveille story, but just all these things that you see like culminating to the end of your experience, like everything that happened, obviously some doors were closed, bigger doors were open. Like we love to get people to kind of, I guess, look back on how faith played a role in that. Like, how's that been for you? How did it develop since you were in high school and then kind of leading in? And then I guess ultimately, like, where do you see your relationship with God and where do you see him working the most in your life right now?
yeah, I mean, talked a little bit about earlier. Obviously had a lot of faith in myself and my ability to plan out my life and growing up, and so that came crashing down, as it always will. And so that was kind of a good reminder and a good reset of who was really in charge. And at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, we're all infallible. We're all fallible. We're just kind of never really perfect, and being able to rely on the one who is a lot more comforting than trying to fix it all yourself. So that was something that I learned a lot growing up and was reinforced throughout my whole senior year, freshman year process. And one thing that was really cool to me that I've noticed throughout the last 2 years being in these positions, it's been by far probably the biggest gospel ministry opportunity of my life. I talked to so many people and have talked to so many people in the last 2 years, between interacting with people because they want to hear about Rev, to speeches to Aggie Moms clubs, to talking to a bunch of new students at their orientation, to going to classes and people just asking about, my experience at A&M, even going home and talking to my high school friends. Or there's so many different places and people that I get to speak to. And there's so many things that just have like a foot in the door that just like cracks the door open to possibly talk about my faith. And it turns into sometimes a 30-minute conversation about how God has worked in my life and how God has worked in their life, and how I can just see that God had this master plan the whole time that I never could have seen. Because not only do I get to have like some really cool experiences, and like I love football, I love sports, getting to go to almost every sporting event that Texas A&M has to offer has been a blast for me personally. But now getting to see that God had this massive plan of getting to use me to further his kingdom has been one of the coolest things I've ever noticed. And so, excuse me, sorry, my throat's a little dry, but long story short, that's been something that's been really cool to me, getting to see him work through me. Because at the end of the day, like you said earlier, I feel like a pretty average guy. I'm like 5'10", 5'11", white dude with a bad hairline, and like not a lot going for me on paper, but God using me to even just have like a minor impact on people has been one of the coolest things that I'll probably ever do. And so that's been really cool for me, and something that I've really enjoyed and been really grateful for. And so I think that's something that he had in store the whole time. It was just kind of waiting to get me to. And so that's been a blast for me, and something that I will hopefully continue to try to reflect on and realize the blessings that he has in my life.
Yeah. And Josh, we want to be respectful of your time. And so we on this podcast have a closing question that we ask every single person who comes on the podcast, and we'll give you time to think about it if you need it. But in lieu of your answers, who are you reading, listening to, or following right now that's encouraging your walk with God?
I have a couple different answers. Let's see. So I'd say two main people in my life right now. So it's kind of a weird connection, but long story short, a family that I've gotten to meet through Texas A&M has been really big in my growth in my faith the last 3 years. It's honestly a really cool connection because they're from Marble Falls, which is not far from Cedar Park. Never knew them growing up, but it was a really cool experience I got to have, where we kind of have a very similar upbringing and moral, background. And they have a son who's 2 years older than me, and he did a very similar path to me through college. And so it was really cool to get to know them. And now they're doing my fiance and I's counseling for premarital counseling. And the dad has been one of my biggest mentors I've ever had in life. And getting to go to a Bible study that he leads and doing this counseling with him, and just kind of having a shared vision. And I wouldn't say that he kind of like formed my opinions on life goals and stuff like that, but he's definitely kind of reinforced and encouraged the fact that it's okay to want to get married when you're 21 and, have some kids, and, that being like the joy of your life. Yeah. Reinforcing the idea that that's not a crazy thing to want or strive for has been something that's been really cool for me. So he's been a big one for me. And then secondly, there's 5 yell leaders every year, and then there's like a head yell leader. So the first guy technically is his name is Kyler, and he's a year older than me. He's kind of the same mentality for me. He's also engaged, getting married in May. So he's a little bit ahead of me, not by much, but but yeah, so we're kind of in the same walk right now. And so getting to experience a pretty crazy job that is very time demanding and is pretty easy to get kind of walled up in yourself and think how high and mighty of yourself. And then, you get smacked in the face and realize that it's not about you. It's about other people and the ministry that God's providing you. And so getting to walk through that with him and share the same kind of mindset and mentality of doing life together has been a blast, and something that I'm really grateful for, because he's been able to pour into me and I've been able to pour into him. We've had a really good relationship in the sense that, there's lots of jokes that we can make with each other and have a blast being guys with each other. But at the end of the day, I know that I can count on him to pour into me scripture wise and hold me accountable and make sure that I'm reading my Bible and staying true to who I am and being who I tell people I am. And so that's been really cool for me, getting to experience someone that's kind of my age, or at least around my age, have the same mentality as me and get to grow with him. But then also have someone that has the same moral background as me, but is in a different life stage than me, and get to kind of like mentor me through that. And have those two guys to bounce off of has been extremely pivotal in my relationship with Christ, but also my walk and as a college student. So that's been really cool for me, and that would be my answer. But yeah.
No, that's good. Like, especially you being around those guys and having that type of influence, trust me, that is not weird, that you want to be a productive member of society. You want to get married, you want to start a family. Like, trust me, I know society will tell us nowadays, and that's why we like to find people who stay so grounded in their faith, because I think if you go back to that, that's exactly what God tells us to do: be fruitful, multiply. So the people that are giving you that advice, those are very normal, logical people in a very illogical and crazy world. So continue to lean on those people. I do have just one really quick question, and then we'll kind of wrap up whatever. I know I'm abusing your time, and I'm sorry, dude, but I'm really appreciative that you were able to join us. Now, if I were to take, tomorrow, if we had to load up, what is one, if you could only go to one game outside of a football game for any sport at Texas A&M, what would you go to tomorrow? Ready, go.
Dude, there's one answer.
Does it have to be a future sport?
Yeah, it could be any sport.
It could be past.
Any sport besides football. Any sport at Texas A&M that I'd have to.
Well,
I only have money to go watch one thing.
Can I say the volleyball national championship
obviously
3 months ago?
That's the answer.
Yeah, there you go. So Colin's actually a head volleyball coach, so that's probably the best answer you've given him all day by far.
Okay. Yeah, okay. My fiance played volleyball in high school, and so I've had an awkward amount of interaction with volleyball in a good way. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a lot of fun to watch, and getting to watch them just dominate the last month or so of the season was a blast. And we get to go to every home game, and then we went to most of the postseason, so that was so much fun getting to watch them play.
And I met your A&M's volleyball coach. He's the nicest guy ever. He's awesome.
Jamie is awesome. Jamie, yes, he is great to us, great to students. I've heard such great things from the players about him, so that's been really cool. He's a stud.
Yeah, you definitely that was one of those sports you watch, and when it's played at a high level, you're like, wow, I can't do that at all. I would hurt myself.
Exactly.
Yep. I get smoked in the face. That is something that I would not even be able to touch. But
Colin did say he'd always be better than them, though.
Yeah. Get out of here, ladies. Let me show you all how it's
the teams that I coach. I will always be better than I promise.
There you go.
That's it. There you go. There's the clarification.
It's not even true now. Whatever. Land the plane.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thanks, man. You've always been an inspiration to me. You've had a much bigger impact on me than I know that I've had on you. And like I said, everything you're doing is not surprising to the people that have known you for any amount of period of time. And so I'm super proud for everything that you're doing. If you ever need an assistant that you can pay any amount that's way more than what teachers and coaches make, just keep me in mind. I'll be your first call. Rev can sleep under my bed 365 days a year, and so that my TRS 2.0 can take off. But thanks for sharing your story, man. Everybody that's listening, I know you made it this far. Colin sounds like a dummy with all the questions he's been asking, and Alex is just along for the ride. And me, apparently, I'm a closet fan, and here we are. So
I'm in the closet.
I might as well have just popped my ring from there. Yeah, Ryan, pause the episode. Colin, bond in. But yeah, thanks, man. So, you guys that are listening, don't forget to follow us at Good Times Bad Friends on Spotify. Follow Josh on all social media. Keep up with this journey because, keeps getting better and better year after year. So we'll see you guys next week. And then Josh, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
thanks for being with us. Thanks for having a good conversation, man.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Josh. Hey, for a college kid, he was pretty well spoken.
He's good, dude. He was just like that in high school too, almost intimidating to talk to because you're like, dude, you're 17. And he's like, yeah, but I'm way better than you. And you're like without having to say it, he's just like, oh, you can't pronounce that word. That's adorable. And I'm like, stop, dude. Seriously.
Stop.
Hippopotamus. Why does he get all the easy ones? Like that movie clip. Dude, we got the new, rolling with the new profile picture, by the way. Colin, I look good. Cartoon me.
Oh, you like it?
It cut
cool.
15 years off my life. I don't recognize that guy, but
y'all are hot.
me, and it looks pretty. Dude, y'all are fine.
Good times, hot friends, and Colin, dude. We're on a new 2026 is going to be awesome. And we're good.
Are we joining OnlyFans or are we trying to have a party? Good friend. To chat GPT. Hey, I didn't say anything about your intro.
Good times, bad friends.